Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Industry and Transition podcast with Tony Sirianni. That's me. So welcome. I'm very happy to be talking with Trap Kloman, President and COO of Commonwealth Financial Network. But I do know we have something in common. You have 3 daughters and I have 4.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So I've loved it. I often get a lot of people commiserating or saying, oh, how do you
It's the best. To be a dad is the best.
It's been great. So
it's hard on mom sometimes, but it's easy for us.
no, it's going well. And they all watch the Marvel Avenger movies with me.
Oh,
so,
sure.
Yeah,
That's fun. That's fun. It's a good time. Well, speaking of family type gatherings, you're just coming off of a big gathering, and it's been a long time. Just offhand, 3 years since maybe you guys got together with all the folks
Yeah.
at Commonwealth.
Yeah, for our national conference, it was 3 long years.
So we just came. I'm just coming off of an event of our own, and it was great to see everybody back together. I got to believe you must be still on a high a little bit with all the folks getting together. You had thousands, right?
Almost 2,000. And
Wow.
I've been doing these for years, and they're always valuable and entertaining, and on one level energizing. But it's also a very intense week. I came out of this one, as I think all of Commonwealth did, completely energized. Like the energy you get from the community and the ideas and the feedback and the relationships. It was just phenomenal across the board. And I'll give our conference team a ton of credit. They really built an environment where we could connect. It just wasn't session after session. There was a lot of breakouts where you get individuals meeting based on common interests or demographics. And so that, you really found a lot of micro communities that sparked a lot of energy. It's pretty cool.
So the pandemic accelerated a lot of change, right? But it also accelerated a lot of conversations around things. I don't know how well they apply to our industry. I just had a bunch of CEOs together at which I'm going to invite you to, for next year. We had for our CEO event.
I love that.
And one of the things we talked about was back to work, or back to the office. I guess you shouldn't even say back to work, back to the office.
Exactly.
And we're an apprentice business, right? There's no getting around it. I mean, how do you learn this if you're a young person? I mean, going to this event, you're talking about the energy. I think there is a pent-up desire for us to get together again and be together. There's something to, you always learn something from the person down the hall that does 401k, something you didn't know about. You know what I mean?
Yeah. One of the great things about the conference is I think Commonwealth is great. Our sponsors are tremendous. We all have a lot of material and experience to share, but the most valuable thing by far is the peer-to-peer learning that advisors can get. And one of the great things about the conference is not just the top producer, if you will. They bring their teams, and not just junior advisors or next gen advisors. They bring their staff too. And so all the connections that are made, they get their best ideas and learn so much from each other. And I'm always blown away how much they're so giving and willing to share with each other. There's just not a competitive bone in their body when it comes to our community. Yeah. So the advisors really value coming together. And I'd also say
that's so important. That's so important. The sharing and the transparency is so important, especially when you've missed it for 3 years, to come back. And I think people are desperate to share. People love giving too.
Yep. And you had mentioned some of the younger people, the opportunity to build a career and be mentored. The whole return to office, I think there has been some confusion or some resistance at times between inertia or life is complex. And we definitely want to be accommodative and respectful of that. But one of the cool things we're now seeing, both with our advisors, but also with our own employees in the home office, so many of the young, the 20-somethings are so eager to get back in the office and build those connections. Now, maybe not 5 days a week, but they definitely want to be in because they realize how valuable that is to learning and building careers. So I actually have a lot of hope, a lot of excitement, coming on the heels of being, out of the office for 2 years, about our ability to really have a great community still.
Yeah, I have 4 daughters, one of, as we talked about, but one of whom is trying to get into this business, and all 4, they're in their 20s. I look a lot younger than I am. They're all in their 20s, like the mid to late 20s, but they all miss the office, and they're all anxious to get in there, just to see things like, how does a business lunch work? I want to go into stuff, and I want someone to just tell me, how do I manage this situation? When it's one thing if you do it on a phone, it's a totally different one. And the idea of a conference with the whole, I love the idea of bringing the staff and everybody together, because they can commiserate and talk and let's make this better. Let's make this more efficient. Let's figure out better ways to do things. It's just better, you know?
It is, speeds up the communication.
Totally. So in my speaking to folks from Commonwealth and talking to a couple of folks that work for you at a senior level, you know, whether we're doing something like this or just like in a Q&A with me, there's one thing that I find that's fun and interesting, and I wonder if this was part of the conference, but I look at it as sort of a key differentiator for your brand. And I think other advisors don't know so much about it, but the way you guys tackle growth or helping advisors kind of grow their businesses is pretty unique.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons it starts and works so well is, you know, you have to understand why you grow. What's the purpose of growth? And for us, it's about the advisor success. And we focus on our existing 2,000 advisors first and foremost. So you can buy your way to growth, you can recruit more advisors, and we certainly want to attract great advisors to the business. But it starts by helping our existing advisors really grow, or I almost prefer the word succeed, because everyone has different goals.
Yeah,
We want to help them achieve those goals, whether it's be more efficient, whether it's preserve what you built, or add more clients, become more scalable. And so that starts as our focus, and then that will naturally attract the right advisors from a recruiting perspective. It's a great filter. So as we think about how we approach that growth, there's really two high-level things you can do. One is business solutions. How can we be business consultants? We know the best advisors in the industry. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Let us help you. You're independent. We want to respect that, but we can certainly guide you through a lot of best practices. And then we still recognize that each firm we work with is still individual. So none of it's cookie cutter. We really listen to you and understand you uniquely, and then guide you through what we really understand is your best options through all our other relationships. And then the other side of the equation is just operational efficiency. When you're thinking about growth or happiness or time, we really want to give advisors time. And so the more back and middle office functions we can take is key, but then also making working with us easy. How much can we automate, digitize, and make the user interface enjoyable? You know, I'll give Amazon and Uber and Spotify so much credit for really creating a demand for a great experience. And that makes, you know, for a more productive office. And that's something we've embraced.
So here's what's interesting about what I'm hearing you say and hearing you talk about. You're a businessman and you're looking at this like a business that you want to grow. And I could tell you what's going on, and we can talk about this a little bit, but what we see going on in the larger industry is a bunch of deals being made. Big difference between a deal guy and a business guy. You know, I mean, guy, man, or woman, right? So if you're somebody that's out there, you know, and you're aggregating and trying to make deals, I don't think you understand that, you know, financial advisors is more like a baseball team than a football team. These are individual people doing their own thing. And you got to kind of, what you're talking about is how to help make these individuals better and then bring them together as a team. What I see a lot out there is these big people looking for scale, aggregating without doing any of that stuff. They're just trying to cram people together without it.
Yeah. And someone listening to this will be smiling at least, because I used to be an M&A guy. I ran M&A, and there are certain values or benefits from doing it that way. So it's not that there's one right and one wrong. There's many different business models out there, and it's so key for the advisor just to find the right partner. We're frankly not trying to be everything to everyone, but you're exactly right. Growing through acquisition, it can really result in missing a lot of opportunities that benefit the existing base. And so that's, you know, it is very intentional that we listen to and think about our existing advisors. Grow through acquisition, when it can add value to the community or fill in a missing capability or a product, phenomenal. That makes a ton of sense.
But even when you bring these guys on, they're still coming into the climate that you created, which is about growing your business. I mean, that's the point. And I got nothing against going out there and grabbing stuff, but I do think it's a bad model to just be an aggregator that just throws money at it, throws people together, and then thinks that you're not building a business that way. You're cobbling stuff together, but that's not a business. You're creating a deal down the road, maybe.
And importantly too, like, people want choice. So if an advisor feels bought or sold, or frankly, a client, advisors are doing the same things with books of business.
Yeah.
You want, I think the best advisors who are later in their careers and they're thinking about succession, they're finding the best homes for their clients. And similarly for us, I don't want to buy an advisor and have them feel stuck at Commonwealth. I don't have a choice. I can't get out of this. I want them to be here, be excited. And I really respect that we have a lot of good competition. They could go somewhere else if they wanted. I like the 30-day contracts that we have with our advisors. I think that makes us better.
I couldn't agree more. And I think the big problem I have, again, you're being a nice guy with everybody, but I'm like, one thing I don't like, you see at these big bank programs, they own the book, and come on, and it's just, why don't you spend all that time and money that you spend suing people, making your place a nice place that people want to stay? If you just spend that money helping everybody, wouldn't that be better?
Yeah, and it's frankly, it's a better economic model. The cost to replace,
yes.
If you're losing advisors out one end, and you're buying them on the other end, that's extremely inefficient. And we have lost advisors here and there once in a while. Usually there's no rhyme or reason. There's some unique personal circumstance that drives that, and we'll give them their data. They can call back a month later and say, "Oh, I have a problem," or "I think this trail still went to your firm. I didn't change my BD of record." No problem. We'll go find it and we'll remit it to them. So, I can't think of any that don't remain advocates for Commonwealth even after they've left or retired. But you're exactly right. Our focus is on keeping them here because they want to be here, because we've made ourselves indispensable. They're going to be better with us than they would be with someone else. And that feels pretty good when we pull that off.
But that's the stuff. I mean, it sounds pretty simple when we're talking about it. But the fact is, that's the whole point of having a baseball team versus a top-down, football team telling everybody what to do. It's about your people are there. They're free agents. They can do what they want, but they're there because it's like-minded, because you're helping them. You're doing better than they can do on their own. You're giving them more resources and stuff, and having some scale, which brings up another issue that for me, which is, right now there are some headwinds. We've got inflation, we've got regulation. I think is a really big, they're heightening regulation on our business and saying directly to my reporters and to people, we're only getting started here. So there's a lot more to come. So there's a benefit to scale on in the independent world. I mean, I do think the banks on the one side do have that kind of, they're on top of it, but a little harder for an independent actor to stay on it.
Yeah, on one level, the regulation is very frustrating because I think they're attacking the lowest common denominator. Financial advisors it's an amazing profession doing amazing things for people who are in desperate need of financial health and wealth. I mean, it's not just the returns, it's peace of mind. And there are a few bad apples, and they're traditionally not in the larger, more established firms, but that's where the regulators tend to focus because, well, I won't dive deeper into that. But the regulation, it can be quite challenging. And I do feel for our advisors who have to spend more time than they should on dealing with such issues versus helping more clients if they had that additional time. On the flip side, though, I think the best firms, and I'll put ourselves in that bucket, can use regulation to our benefit. We can differentiate ourselves because we'll take on as much of that burden as we possibly can, because we have great advisors that they aren't monkeying around. And so we'll stand behind them and we can carry that heavy lift. And so that creates a competitive advantage for them versus some other advisors who aren't getting that support from their compliance and regulatory teams. And as funny as it sounds, so we're always surveying our advisors. We're all about the advisor feedback loop. And one of the groups that's always called out, especially from new advisors who made the transition from another firm recently, they love our compliance team because our compliance team's job is to help our advisors grow and succeed and find more time. It's not to punish them or police them. And our advisors recognize that and appreciate it.
And advisors want to do things right. Do you ever run into an advisor that doesn't want to do things? They always want it. They will tell me what I'm supposed to do. I'll do it.
Yeah, well, I'm watching
Give me a procedure that's right.
Yeah, I'm watching Ozark right now, so I think I'm seeing everyone's worst fears of what a financial advisor could be. But that's exactly right. Advisors are part of communities. It's a very community-based job, especially in the RIA and independent space, if you will. That their clients are in their towns and on their children's teams and in their schools. So yeah, advisors are great people giving back to their communities, and they feel a great sense of pride and responsibility to that.
So one thing my little birds tell me, which it's great because of where I sit with AdvisorHub, I get to know everything. But I heard that not only was your event successful, but that you made a pretty bold prediction or a pretty bold goal, $1 trillion in AUM. That's where you're going. You sticking with that?
100% sticking with it. But I don't find it to be bold, if you will. So I think it would be bold or stupid, frankly, if we said $1 trillion in 2 years. So we're at about 250 billion right now. So that's quadrupling. And that actually sounds impressive. 1 trillion is a great number, and we're very excited about it. But I guess I'd highlight two things behind that. So one is, if we achieve that at an appropriate rate of growth, we can sustain our community and sustain our service without upsetting what makes Commonwealth special, the quality.
See, and that's what people would worry about. See, for me, that's my first question. You say $1 trillion, I'm like, yeah, okay, but then you're going to lose a lot of the character and the closeness and all the things that people value of it.
Yep. And so if we bought our way towards that, that's building our
recipe, right?
A mess that would, you can buy your way there, but that is not the premise that we want to do it on. We want to maintain the quality in the community. We want to keep winning every JD Power Award there is for our space to accomplish that. And so if over the last 7 or so years, we've been growing our assets per advisor. So we generally recruit about at our average. So this is organic growth at about 13%, and that includes the market.
Yeah.
That has, when you look at Sirianni data, we've outgrown our peers. And so to achieve that $1 trillion, we just need to continue that pace plus our normal rate of recruiting. And we're not going to sacrifice the quality of the advisors we work with. Like, the worst thing you could say to me is to be at one of our conferences, and one of the advisors who I'm good friends with, and I know their families, and they come up and say, well, why is that person here? That would break my heart. And that is a tenet we will not change. And so the $1 trillion we can achieve in, I don't care if it's 9 years, 11 years, we can achieve that in about 9 or 10 years doing what we've always done. What I think is special about the $1 trillion, and what we the $1 trillion gets a lot of oxygen, as it should and as intended. But what is special about it is, now I do say, yep, and I'm not buying it. I'm doing it, growing our existing 2,000 advisors and making them more productive. That's the path to $1 trillion.
And what I like about that is that's we just got back from our conference, which was about $1 billion FAs, and all about a lot of guys with 750, 500 million. They were looking to get to $1 billion. And that's the way to do it. You build your book the exact same way. You don't go crazy. Yes, there's maybe an acquisition here and an acquisition there, fantastic, but you've already done a bunch of successful things. Let's keep doing it so that you don't end up with a Frankenstein. Everything.
So let me ask you, what was the most interesting? That sounds like a great conference. What's the most interesting thing you took away from that?
Well, other than what we talked about, which is the enthusiasm of people actually, being back together, that I think the feeling was 5 billion is going to be the new billion. And I'm stealing that a little bit from Ed Swenson at Dynasty, but he's not the only guy I heard talking about that too. But that, these things are advisor books, and their eyes are getting bigger. So when you put out $1 trillion, that's kind of what triggered me a little bit too. A lot of the advisors there, $1 billion wasn't the only thing they were focused on somewhere, but a lot were focused on 5. Mm-hmm. And how do we get this going? And that, initiates, I think you'll see, here's one thing I think that could happen in your business too. As you grow, the advisors grow, and it starts to become a different kind of thing, because advisors have to become CEOs. That was a big part of what we talked about too. Now I'm a CEO more than I am a, sales or just an advisor, and I need to sort of manage a team. And you need a different level of resources for that, too. It's a shift. So I do think these larger teams are going to do that. My hope and my fear is that somehow we walk away from training people, and not just training them to be teammates, Trap. I mean, training them, because a lot of firms, we train people and we add them to teams because the big teams see a great person, they grab them,
Mm-hmm.
But that's not an entrepreneurial job. I want to hope we don't lose the ability to create other $1 billion producers who start from scratch. That's my concern.
Yeah, because the way I've thought about it, especially within our community, we have several billion-dollar firms and
Right.
multiples more 500 to a billion. And then we still have, whether it's half or slightly more, are still silos or smaller groups, individual practices that might come under one banner. But what I love is we can service them all. But for some of the advisors who, because they haven't built an enterprise, we have a built-in succession plan for them. They're going to have a great office that can care for their clients, remain part of Commonwealth, and they glide into it. And our large enterprises have this natural affiliation with many advisors are going to be either looking to affiliate with a larger practice or that be their succession plan. So it's a great symbiotic relationship. But you're right. As I think about, the emerging middle ones, I think for the next 5 years and looking at our advisors, I feel amazing about that. But you're right. How does that sustain itself? And something for me to really noodle on.
Yeah, I know, something to think about, right? So I'm always concerned about this next gen because I don't see other people doing the traditional training things. And I don't see, by the way that you and I came up in this business of cold calling, you can't do that anymore. So I just wonder how are they gonna, I mean, I think the social media stuff's gonna work out in a way that makes sense, but we're kind of not there yet.
One interesting thing on that, in terms of the training programs is, cold calling, even though I think a lot of people learned a lot from it, no one ever wants to do it again, and rightfully so. But a lot of it's tough for a 20 something to have someone commit meaningful amount of wealth to a 20 something. And that's where I think a lot of the ensemble or enterprise practices can actually really create that training environment, because those 20 somethings, there's programs all over the country now where they're graduating with a CFP. And they know how to come in, add value to an office, run the software platforms for the financial planning, and be that expert. And so really, when you can get those types of environments where everyone plays a role, a 20 something is no longer a cost overhead, they're value add, and they're learning the industry, learning the relationships. The social skills, as we were discussing earlier, from being in person are so critical to being a great advisor and being empathetic. And now we don't have to wait for someone to fall out of a training program from a big bank or switch careers in their 30s. So I think between the enterprise approach to building practices and bringing in young advisors, and the fact that businesses should be more scalable in the future through technology, and firms, not only Commonwealth, but firms that can do the back office, they can support more clients. So that's one of the trends I've been less concerned about.
And also, from a diversity and inclusion standpoint, as you said, if you're a first generation college person, you come through, it's tough to find new business. You don't have a natural network, so you need some. Yep. You need help with that. All right, look, we, believe it or not, we're over time, and as much as people love us, I'm not sure everybody wants to listen to us for another half hour. However, we got more of this conversation. This was a lot of fun, and we could certainly do this again. Is there anything in particular that you want to talk about that I didn't mention in this?
No, you're absolutely right. Make sure short and sweet is always good, but happy to get back together in 2023 and see what's going on.
Great. Well, thanks a lot. Appreciate it, Trap.
Yeah, have a great Thanksgiving. Take care.